Thank you for the invitation. I'm so glad to be able to guide you through the whole topic of AI. We will talk about AI, Europe, and venture capital, and we will talk about risk. On the one hand, risk with regard to AI, but also with regard to how we see risk as a venture capital investor. So what's the biggest risk of AI, really? The greatest risk. You read a lot about the doomsday scenarios in the press media, that a lot of things go wrong. And of course, these are things that you should deal with. But in my eyes, the biggest risk is that we will miss out on it. Again, if we look at the past few years, you can see that there have been some technological innovation and breakthroughs that have changed the world, and it will be the same with AI. Sometimes we say this will be the last big technology because quite a lot of problems can be resolved with that technology in healthcare, in biotech, but also in many different companies in what we have to do every day as humans. And if you look at other topics, other of these technological trends, there have been companies who were missing out on this. Kodak is one of the examples when it's about digital photography, for instance. A second example might be travel. That is something which had quite some impact in recent times, where technologies were just missed out on. And also in retail, where Amazon has had a very strong growth. And it's the same now with AI, I suppose. It's even more fundamental here because AI is not just going to disrupt one industry, but every and any industry. The healthcare system, to get better diagnosis, to optimize processes in hospitals, to develop new medical drugs and so on, and all the creative work. We all thought creativity is the last thing that AI will be able to do, but it's one of the first things where AI, at least at first glance, was quite well doing, for instance, when it's about drawing up marketing materials, or when it's about doing product design. In education, there's also quite a lot of potential when we talk about personalized training and so on. Now there are the first AI tutors who can really give lectures, and that in a much better way than humans could, and also software development. And that's really exciting. Those people who build the AI can actually eliminate their own jobs in the end. But we can see in our company that our developers are 3 times more productive now when it's about writing code. So with the AI tools, they can really have some input and also develop prototypes much faster. So it will affect any kind of industry, and I'm going to talk about our investment focus later on in order to tell you the broad range of topics we're going to look at. And this happened so quickly. In the software age, we had companies growing very fast. Slack that was going up to $100 billion sales quite quickly. And in AI times, it's even faster. Level Ups went up to $2 billion quite quickly. Lovable, that is a company allowing to build apps without writing software. And that is also, after 5 months, they have actually had the $15 million threshold after a few months only. So it's not just trying out things, but people paying money because they see some added value in this. And I think that is so interesting that the AI revolution is coming towards us so quickly. And I'm going to give you a few more examples about what the transformation is. I think in Europe, we have to see to it that we are not missing out on it. Again, there were a few other things that we missed in the past, where actually all the companies weren't created with, or weren't set up here in Europe, but in the United States. So it's important in AI that we do it here in Europe, because when we look at our stock market, for instance, in the United States, quite a few huge companies have arisen in the technology sector, but also those who were working in the technological field. And we do have the money. Jörg by KfW told us that quite of institutional capital is available here in the United States. They use this money much more to invent in venture capital, something that happened in the past, was quite successful in the past, but it's got a social aspect as well, because money should be invested in a better way so there's a better return. So ultimately, more is invested in technology so that this can be driven forward. And we've got quite a good domain knowledge knowledge. If we look at some of the knowledge, we have quite some good knowledge in Europe, which can be combined with AI knowledge in order to build up companies, life sciences, chemicals, also industries that are very strong in Europe, where there's quite a lot of domain knowledge, and either there are outsourcings or spin-offs from these companies, or they become customers of companies. And financial services, all the fintech revolution happened in Europe mainly. We were more innovative there than the United States, and I think we can manage the same with AI in the future. And technically, we are in a great situation. Some of the persons who actually have invented some of the architecture behind ChatGPT are working in Berlin on the campus. He's German. He was growing up here. He's building up a very, very big company right at the moment. So there are many German, French, Swiss, or UK universities having good, very good and smart graduates. And so a lot of the AI innovation comes from European universities. So we've got the substance in Europe, and many invest in technical subjects already. So they go into STEM facilities, and that is really very good. And in the past, in the other industries, if we look at the time before AI, we built a lot of quite great companies. So there are some companies like Trelonis in Germany that are worth more than 10 billion, and they have changed a lot. I think what's really important is that regulation is not a pretext that you use, because when in the United States I meet with investors, I have to explain 15 times why you can still invest in AI in Europe because of the regulation. If you look at what happened to the UAI Act, where regulations implemented now. Of course, there could have been less regulation. They should have first built things before they start regulating them. But at the same time, many of the high-risk areas like healthcare, autonomous mobility, and so on have been regulated even before that. So the EU AI Act doesn't really do something here, and where we have low risk, the EU AI Act does also not really have any effect. So it's the little part in between where it's applied. So it's not a big burden. It's rather a problem that we see towards the investors, that we have to give them the right information, and also regarding the customers and the SMEs, where people are in decision-making company roles that are really punished when they take the wrong decision, because the sales cycles are getting longer. But in the end, it's not a disadvantage, and a lot is happening also in Europe, in particular now after the new US government is in place. For instance, the EU thing where one company, where you can actually have one corporate structure for the whole of Europe, which is standardized. So you can actually attract talents, and you can invest a lot of capital. And KfW and the AI Act are doing a lot of things here. So we've got a good basis here. And a lot of venture capital is coming from the United States our way now. And what is really interesting is that we see a strong flow of talents back to Europe. On the left side, you see the net talent flow. That was a statistic that was raised a few years ago. How many go to the United States and how many are here? So that has gone down quite well. People going to USA. No, they're coming back now, or they don't even go to the United States of top AI researchers. And I think that's a great chance for Europe to really take that talent and really build up transforming AI companies here. So much about the introduction. If we talk about investment, now, if you want to invest, what should you do in Europe? How should and where should investors approach AI? And now, the thing is how we break down the stack. The first thing is at the bottom. It's not to do with AI. It's power and electricity, what you need. So if you actually calculate big AI models, you need a lot of power. And if we want to build more data centers in Germany, this is a real bottleneck to have the right power lines there. And the next thing is the computer hardware. This is also something where there's still some strong dependencies on NVIDIA. AMD is slowly catching up. And there are some now on AMD already on the chip side. And then there's a geopolitical complexity, but also because the supply chains are very, very much dependent internationally. But this is something where we in Europe don't really have a say in usually. Then we've got the cloud providers. They do a lot, and they are important, of course. What's really interesting here is that next to the big cloud providers, there there are more and more smaller ones coming up, and they're focusing on AI. Because when the companies are growing a little bit, they know or notice how much they are paying to AWS, GCP, or Azure, and so on. So they're trying to optimize the costs now. And meanwhile, there come some specialized AI cloud providers at 20% of the cost. So if you have big compute loads, this makes a difference. And what we can see in our companies, for instance, when you work in the healthcare environment or when you have to work with sensitive data, it very often makes sense to stay with European providers. So quite a lot of new providers are coming up, more specialized. Then there are the foundations models. This is something I will talk about in a moment, where ChatGPT probably was the first OpenAI with GPT models. And then meanwhile, a lot more have occurred, in particular in the United States, but also in some other places in the world, like Mistral in France, or of course in China, DeepSeek. Then there's a lot of engineering tools, which are tools which make it easier for developers to develop AI engines and so on. That's the infrastructure layer, and on top of that is the application layer. And that is the tools with which you make use of AI, where it becomes applicable. Now, let me give you a little bit of background for this. In the past few months and years, a lot was talked about the fact that a lot of money was invested in the AI infrastructure stack. It was a big project in the United States. Many billions were invested in AI structures, and data centers came up. This is a nice asset class like real estate, and you've got energy and AI involved, and everything ticks a lot of boxes, in other words. And it will become important to finance this infrastructure and build it up, of course. But the question is that forward-looking the right focus? And what's really interesting, if you look at the foundation models that we were just talking about, you will see that now there are quite a lot of them around. On the left side, you see the few ones, and that's the model performance. They're not all equal in quality. But in the beginning, we thought ChatGPT was the only model, and now we've got 20 or 30 different models, and every day there's a new model launched, obviously. And the costs were brought down. For the same AI model today, as 2.5 years ago, you would pay only a 100th part of the costs. So for the same calculation, of course, the models became better, which means that for the latest model, you will pay probably again the same amount. But do you need that for most applications? That's the other question. And this commercialization will go on in the next 1 or 2 years. We will not even talk about this because there will be so many models that you can just pick one, and a lot is open source. So there are no dependencies like that anymore. And then 2 or 3 months ago, there were the news from China with DeepSeek, when the Chinese all of a sudden didn't need 100 million or billion AI models, but they only have a 1 billion amount, and even smaller ones are available now. What was important is not that it came from China, but someone was able, with not much innovation, but a lot of good engineering tricks, was able to develop something on a smaller scale. And OpenAI very much focuses on the fact that they say we are the only and the best and no one can catch up. And it might be true that they are quite well in the front, but everything coming a few months later, technologically, there you will see that the knowledge is diffused because a lot of publications are there and people can catch up. The question is, can you use a Chinese model or not? That's not really a relevant issue, I think, because indeed it's difficult if you have customers in Germany or Europe. But it shows, since they published a paper with the DeepSeek model, that with much less resources you can generate AI models. And in the next few months, and I know quite a lot of European teams who are coming up with European AI models. So we see a lot of these models in Europe, and commercialization will start. Or commoditization will start. And it's quite similar to what we had before. If we look at the year 2000, that was height of .com market cap, not the optimized thing, but those were the companies that were really big, and they did infrastructure. That was Cisco building the boxes to get online, and IBM with the computer and the chips. Those were the big numbers at that time. But when you look at which companies really became big, those were the application companies on top. Google for access for information, Meta for social, Amazon for logistics. And that's just a very small part of all the big companies. They saw the technology, they used it, in this case, the internet, of course, and then they built up new business models on top of that. And as we saw in the beginning, they actually displaced some of the old ones. And our hypothesis is that the same will happen in the AI environment. We've got now the infrastructure. Companies in NVIDIA will be there even in 20 years' time, and OpenAI as well, and another few big names, because we need the infrastructure, and we, with our companies, also built on this infrastructure. But the question is, are they going to be the most transformative and biggest companies? And now that we all have all these tools, I think it's now more important to get them into the industry and into implementation. And going back to Europe, I think we have good chances and good opportunities here. A lot of that is open source. A lot is available through APIs. Of course, you are somehow dependent on the cloud providers, and some of them are heroes. So, but in the end, we've got equal playing fields. And if the talent stays and capital goes where there's efficiency, where you can earn money, of course, then in the end, we don't have any reason to feel that we're left behind. So I think it's really interesting now to look at the application layer and invest there. In this context, to give you just a few examples and talk a little bit about Merantix, my company, I actually spun it off from a PhD 8 years ago because I did my PhD there, and I thought it was really bad at the time that we've got a lot of good talents, but the translation into applications isn't going as well as it does in the United States. So in order to drive AI in Europe as an investor on the one hand, but also through further initiatives, we founded this company. And concretely, we have 3 different divisions. One on the left side is Merantix Momentum. That's a service provider where we offer AI solutions for DAX companies and mid-sized companies. So we use AI. Sorry, then the AI campus in Berlin. We have 1,500 people there working in AI applications for 100 companies, for SMEs as well as startups. We've got a lot of visitors there. We try to bring the AI community better together, because that works quite well in the United States. The stakeholders work together there, and in Europe, unfortunately, they don't.
The third thing is that AI was already named in Davos, and so we did that together with the ATA Zurich, and we developed a think tank. We have a conference once per year, and so it's very interesting in terms of leadership who participates, and so it's one of our customers is the person who leads the Meta AI time, and then we will have the new AI fund, which is supposed to encompass 100 million euros. So here we have a couple of companies. I'm going to show you 3 more examples, but this is really from healthcare. We have 100. We have many diagnoses of breast cancer, and we have cybersecurity, and these are just a couple of companies from our portfolio companies. So we see there is no industry that is being left out. So we have Libra, for example. Libra is a company that applies AI in the legal sector. Victor, the founder, has built 20,000 hours at Freshfields, and so he founded that together with us, with a technical co-founder. And so they're building this for law firms, and they're really growing strongly. They have they are growing 50% per month since beginning of the year, and last year they became profitable, which is not the target for startups that soon. They're not that big, but they're really interesting. And so the entire company is composed of lawyers and IT people. So I think that shows that there is really something going on. And what's interesting is that this is not only a business model where something is sold to lawyers that they can go golfing earlier, but this is also going to businesses. Many customers are businesses who say, okay, we want to discharge our legal department, so that we need to give out less to external law firms. But these are also companies who centralize things. This is about NDI supplier contracts and all that to review that. And the legal department can then use the tool to review documents automatically, can do markups, can also show answers and send them out. And this is all completely automated. And I think this is a very practical application, but it also shows that this is not only about building ChatGPT for legal, but also to change entire workflows. I'm surprised, but this is really happening real fast currently. Another company, Delta AI, they are very different. They're in the producing industry. They're putting up cameras in factories in order to improve workflows. They have 30% efficiency gains within several weeks. So they generate 30% more output for the companies with the same manpower, just by having cameras who understand workflows, and like that they understand what can be optimized. So they're at ABB, Continental, Bosch, that's the companies they're working with, and Biotech Cambrium, who optimize protein materials. And with that they make it possible to develop entirely new materials. So they're not building algorithms and sell them to the chemical industry, but they are building their own products. And this shows that we go beyond just producing software, and Google is involved. Many of the Elon Musk companies are involved. So how do we invest? So I just showed you a couple of examples, and I'm going to get one step further, and this is also the last part of the presentation. So the second thing is the market. So after team, market is always the second most important thing. Here it's important to look at the right topics. So for us, there are a couple of topics that we find interesting, like the next fintech wave or biohealthcare. The interface between biotech and health, and then develop LLMs so that they can create added value. Robotics industrial, there's a lot of working, and after white collar in the next 5 to 10 years, we will probably see a lot of things happening on the blue collar side too. Then the new system of records. So the question of how can you reinvent an ERP system? How can you replace that? Can you use new workflows, and can you replace databases with that? So we've got a couple of companies that we funded here too. Defense too. This is also a sector in which happens a lot of things are happening. Neuroscience, brain research. Here we have lots of things going on. Another thing that we're focusing on is IP protection. That means when data for AI models are used, so what does intellectual property mean, and how is that going to develop? There are a couple of interesting business models there too. So in general, we have highly regulated industries, and the topic of fraud is really a big one. Also in terms of government, so our services company really does more than 1/3 of revenue in the public sector, for example, by using LLMs in the public sector. And as the baby boomers are now going to retire, this is not only a question of replacing, but also of keeping the state running in the first place. So we had a couple of interesting projects here, and also cybersecurity. This is a huge topic. So when everybody can build software with AI, and when they can also do cyber attacks with AI, how do we secure our systems with that? And so here we funded a couple of companies. So also in the energy sector, there's lots of things happening. And the last topic, design creativity, and not only when it's about marketing, but also about product design, about optimizing products. There's lots of potentials here for AI. These are a couple of examples. I'm showing you a broad portfolio in order to show you that there is rarely any domain which is not touched by that. And then we have Hoshi, for example, that is a company that sits on top of ERP systems. So they make automations, and you have an order, they write emails, so there is no people inside there anymore. And it is important here that if you're calculating the case and say, okay, so how could they get to 1 billion of recurring revenue? And then to think, okay, well, can that have a meaningful impact on the fund? Because if we invest in 40 companies, we invest in 40 companies with our fund. There are a couple of them which have more potential, but there's always the possibility also that one company brings an X time revenue to the fund. So third, technology. Basically, it's like that AI is written onto everything, and I think there is no there is no pitch deck anymore where you don't have AI on and so I think you need to differentiate anyway. So if you don't deal with the topic every day, you need to find where is there depth, where is an in-depth meaning here, where is a product that goes into depth, that creates value, and that only acquires some customers due to AI, and then which they will then leave again. And then the paradigm that to create value when the AI improves and so we think a lot about defensibility and switching costs. The problem with LLMs is that the people aren't loyal, and that's different than with cloud. Cloud migration, if you've done that once in a lifetime, yeah, you can do it a couple of times. It's not as bad as an SAP migration, but it's one level below that. And the problem with LLMs is it's easy to switch. Many of our companies use LLMs, and if there is a new model or it gets cheaper, then they switch to the next provider because it is just a simple API. You just need to change a URL and then build up on another LLM. So companies often work together with different LLM providers in order not to get dependent from one. So the switching costs are very cheap, and that means that the business model in the long term will be rather difficult, and the models are rather similar too. And this integration is pretty difficult. You generate turnover quickly, but you lose it again quickly too. And in the B2B business, it's even the loyalty is even lower. And that's why we're thinking about how can we increase the switching costs so that when you're in, that it's hard to get out. And this is what AI is good for. So and that's what we have, this API integration. And then the next thing is that you integrate in other systems like ERP systems or in the hospital with different databases and like that. Make it more difficult to replace the system. The next thing that is important is trust and brand. So in the area of AI, if you're working with sensitive data or you're in a highly regulated industry, you need to build up trust that the AI can make good decisions and that you have a robust system. And this is something that in the medium term brings a certain defensibility. And the next layer is the fine-tuning and customization. So how can I optimize my AI for the customer, and does that really improve their business case so that I can get kicked out harder because someone else would also need to do the fine-tuning before in order to adjust. One level further is proprietary data ownership. This is something interesting too. So we have one company who do transcriptions for doctors in order to create doctors' reports automatically just by listening to the conversation. And this has been used in Germany already, and it works pretty well. And the interesting thing is that with that you collect additional data which are not part of the health records, because the database is so old school that different things can't even be saved in there. And if you collect additional data that are not saved so far, then you also build up data protection that creates lots of lock-in. And the last thing, if you're integrated in workflows, that with that it gets hard to really change those processes back. So if we take legal tech, if the entire legal department begins working differently, then it's difficult to turn that back, particularly if it works well. And these switching costs to build them up, this in the AI AI environment is extremely important, and this is something that we think about a lot. Competition is also something that can't be underestimated. So it's like that many numbers are thrown around how great the AI model is, and sometimes things are embellished a little. So you need to think about how you can benchmark the AI model correctly and see whether it's really innovative or whether it is just another algorithm which might not be better, or even only the same that is easy to have. And the second thing is also to think about what are the competitors. So are there cloud providers that are entering that domain? Are there the traditional players that will continue developing with AI and then become competition too? Are there in-house developments? There are probably very unusual competitors because the field is so new. And then the question is that the market is dynamic, and the question is, what do I do? Today, I can map the competitors tomorrow, but how does that look in 5 to 10 years? And one trick that we're using is to say, okay, what if the AI algorithm does not do any errors? So whether that is realistic or not. So if they would make perfect decisions, what would that mean for our business model? What we could do, and who else could enter the market? And we're looking at that strongly, but in different markets, there will probably be many more companies. Traction is something that we're having a look at too. So how can we evaluate whether the company will develop or not? And the interesting thing is we have companies that are pretty small, actually, and like the legal tech example, which are already in profitability, because with a small cost basis, you can build a lot. And actually, this is not the mass of customers, but we will need to see whether there are a few good customers and really pass lots of time with those. So monthly growth is important. We're looking at the lending account values. So how big is the first contract? Is that a 10,000 euro contract per year, 50,000, 100,000, 500,000? What do we need in order to get there? What are the acquisition costs? And in order to ultimately win over the customer? And then the question, can I upscale them? So if I start with a small product, 10,000 euros or so, how much can I earn with them in the medium run? And so those who sell snake oil or who can't keep up, we need to see that these are kicked out earlier. So is the retention there? And also the usage patterns. So when the customers still have an ongoing license, active license, then looking one step below, is the product used, by whom, how long, how much, what steps are being used? And these are things that where the top line turnover won't help you, but where you have to look deeper. So the last thing, and I'm done with that, is that we as investors, we invest, but we half of the funds. We're working together with the founders before they even have founded their company. So we are trying to de-risk their ideas and find the right partners for them, so that the setup is correct right from the beginning on. And so here are the takeaways. So I think the slides will be shared afterwards. So if you didn't make any photographs, you can just look them up, or you can just approach me. I've got a couple of minutes for questions, and we also have a couple of dinners that we're going to organize where we talk about AI. So if you're interested in that, please contact me.